I'm a 911 dispatcher. I received a call from a man I know has been dead for a year. The voice on the other end of the line was impossible. I've been a 911 dispatcher in Cedar Falls, Iowa for 8 years. Taken thousands of calls, heard every kind of emergency imaginable, but nothing had prepared me for hearing my brother speak to me from beyond the grave. Oh, 911. What's your emergency? I said automatically, my fingers already poised over the keyboard to input the caller's information. Emma, I need help. Please, you have to help me. My blood turned to ice water in my veins. That voice, I knew that voice better than my own. It was David, my younger brother, the one who died in a car accident exactly 1 year ago today. I'd identified his body myself, watched them lower his casket into the ground, spent months in therapy, trying to accept that he was gone. Who is this? I managed to choke out my training, the only thing keeping me functional. It's David M. Please, I don't have much time. I'm trapped. I've been trapped for so long, and they're coming back. You have to send help to the old Riverside facility. My hands trembled as I pulled up the caller information. The number was blocked, location services showing nothing but static interference. This had to be a sick joke, someone who knew about David, knew about the anniversary, but the voice, God help me. The voice was perfect. Every inflection, every subtle accent from our Minnesota childhood that he'd never quite shaken. David's dead, I whispered, abandoning protocol entirely. My brother died a year ago. I know what you think happened, but listen to me. The accident, it wasn't an accident. They took me. They've had me this whole time. There are others here too, so many others. The experiments, what they're doing to us. It's, oh God, they're coming back. Please, please. The line crackled with static, and I heard something else in the background, footsteps maybe, or something dragging across concrete. Then a sound that made my skin crawl, a wet, organic noise like meat being torn. David, are you there? Hide the records. His voice came back, barely a whisper now. They're in my apartment, under the floorboards in the closet. Everything I found out about Riverside. Don't let them know you have them. And whatever happens, don't come looking for me. Promise me you won't come looking. The line went dead. I sat frozen in my chair, staring at the blank caller information screen. Around me, the dispatch center hummed with normal activity, my colleagues handling their own calls, the familiar chorus of voices and keyboard clicks. But I felt like I was underwater, drowning in impossibility. Emma, you okay? My supervisor, Janet, appeared at my shoulder. You look like you've seen a ghost. If only she knew. I need to take my break, I said, pulling off my headset with numb fingers. Sure, honey, take your time. I stumbled to the break room, collapsed into a chair, and tried to make sense of what had just happened. David was dead. I'd seen his body mangled from the crash, but undeniably him. The funeral director had done his best, but the damage I'd insisted on seeing him one last time before the cremation, needing that final closure. Cremation. We'd cremated him. Whatever was in that urn on my mantel had come from David's body, so how could he have just called me? The rational part of my mind, the part trained to handle emergencies with calm efficiency, offered explanations. Grief, hallucination, someone playing a cruel prank using voice synthesis technology, a mental breakdown triggered by the anniversary. But none of those explanations accounted for the perfect recreation of his voice, the intimate knowledge only David would have. The floorboards in his apartment. I'd kept the apartment for 6 months after his death, unable to let go before finally clearing it out and ending the lease. I'd never looked under the closet floorboards. Why would I have? But Riverside, that name, triggered something. The old Riverside facility was an abandoned medical complex on the outskirts of town, closed down in the 90s, after some kind of scandal. Kids went there to drink and dare each other to go inside. But even the bravest rarely made it past the first floor. The place had a reputation, stories of strange noises, people who went in and came out changed, or didn't come out at all. David had mentioned it once, maybe 2 months before his death. He'd been acting strange paranoid, constantly looking over his shoulder. He was a journalist for the local paper, always chasing stories, but something about his latest investigation had rattled him. "I think I've stumbled onto something big, he'd said over coffee, his eyes darting to the windows. Like, conspiracy level big. But I need more proof before I can publish anything." I'd laughed it off, told him he watched too many thriller movies. 2 weeks later, he was dead. His car wrapped around a tree on a stretch of road he'd driven 100 times without incident. My break was over, but I couldn't go back to my station, not yet. Instead, I found myself in the parking lot calling my best friend Sarah. "Hey, how are you holding up today? I know it's well. I know what day it is." "Sarah, I need a favour, a big one. Can you cover for me? Tell Janet I went home sick." "Of course, but Emma, what's wrong? You sound strange." "But Tim Dinat Samet. I can't explain right now. Just please cover for me." I hung up before she could ask more questions and drove to my apartment. If this was a mental breakdown, at least, I'd have it in private. But first, I needed to check something. David's personal effects were in a box in my closet, the things I couldn't bear to throw away. His wallet still containing his driver's license and credit cards. His watch, the face cracked from the accident. His keys, including the spare key to his apartment that I'd never returned to the landlord. The apartment building was a rundown complex on the east side of town. David had lived there because the rent was cheap, and the landlord didn't ask questions, perfect for a journalist who kept odd hours and occasionally had sources over at strange times. The unit had been re-rented, but the key still worked. The landlord apparently too lazy to change the locks. The new tenant wasn't home, their possessions, a strange overlay on my memories of David's space. But the closet was the same, empty now, except for some winter coats. I knelt on the floor, running my fingers along the boards, until I found what I was looking for, a loose panel that lifted away to reveal a hidden space. Inside was a manila folder thick with documents and photographs. My hand shook as I pulled it out, David's neat handwriting visible on the tab. Riverside Investigation. I sat on the closet floor and opened the folder. What I found there changed everything. Medical records, dozens of them, all stamped with the Riverside facility logo. But these weren't from the 80s or 90s. They were recent, dated just months before David's death. Patient names were redacted, replaced with case numbers, but the procedures described were horrifying. Experimental surgeries, neural mapping, something called consciousness transfer protocols. There were photographs too, grainy shots clearly taken from a distance or through windows. The Riverside facility, which should have been an empty ruin, showed signs of activity. Vehicles in the supposedly abandoned parking lot lights, in windows that had been dark for decades. Figures in medical scrubs moving through the halls. And then I found the newspaper clipping that made my heart stop. It was from 3 years ago, a small item about a man named Michael Torres, who'd gone missing after telling friends he was going to explore the abandoned Riverside facility. His body was never found. But paperclipped to the article was a patient record from Riverside case number U847, admitted the same day Torres disappeared. David had compiled a list, 15 names over 3 years, all people who'd vanished without a trace, all last seen near Riverside, and next to each name a corresponding case number from the medical records. At the bottom of the stack was a USB drive and a note in David's handwriting. "If something happens to me, give this to someone you trust at the FBI. Don't go to local police. I think they're involved. I'm getting close to proof, but they know I'm onto them. I'm being followed. If you're reading this, I'm probably dead. Or worse. Or worse." Those two words echoed in my mind as I drove home the folder hidden under my seat. What could be worse than death? If David was right, if Riverside was some kind of illegal medical facility conducting experiments on kidnapped people, then maybe, just maybe, the impossible was possible. Maybe my brother hadn't died in that car accident. Maybe they'd taken him, and whatever was in that casket hadn't been David at all. But that was insane. I'd identified the body. The dental records matched, the DNA matched. Unless they had ways to fake that too. With advanced enough medical technology, with access to David's medical records, could they have created a convincing enough corpse? I was spiraling, I knew it, but I couldn't stop. Back in my apartment, I plugged in the USB drive. It contained hundreds of files, medical data. I couldn't understand financial records showing money flowing through shell companies and video files labelled with case numbers. I clicked on one at random, case 0852. The video was clearly taken from a hidden camera, the angle awkward, the quality poor. But what I saw made me run to the bathroom and vomit. A figure on an operating table, skull opened up, brain exposed. But the patient was awake, talking, responding to questions from masked doctors. Wires ran from their brain to machines I couldn't identify, screens showing patterns that looked almost like thoughts, given visual form. Subject shows remarkable adaptation to the neural interface. A voice off camera said, "Consciousness transfer rating at 87%. We should be able to complete the process within the week." I closed the video, unable to watch more, but there were dozens more files, each more horrifying than the last. And then I found it, case 0871, dated 1 week after David's supposed death. My finger hovered over the play button. Did I want to know? Could I handle knowing? But I'd come this far, I had to see. The video opened on a recovery room, cleaner and more modern than the operating theatre. A figure lay on the bed, bandages wrapping their head, IV lines running into both arms. The camera zoomed in on the patient's chart at the foot of the bed. Case 0871, admitted October 15th, 2023. Consciousness transfer protocol initiated. Subject shows exceptional compatibility, recommended for advanced trials. October 15th, David's accident had been October 8th. 7 days for them to fake his death, create a body convincing enough to fool everyone, and get him to Riverside. The patient stirred, turning toward the camera, and even through the bandages, I knew. The way he moved the set of his shoulders, the hand gestures, as he tried to communicate with the nurse. It was David. I watched, transfixed, as the nurse made notes on a tablet. Subject attempting vocalization. Neural pathways still adapting to the interface. Estimated 3 weeks before full integration. The video ended, and I realized I was crying. Not the clean tears of grief I'd shed at his funeral, but ugly body shaking sobs of rage and hope and terror. David might be alive. My brother might be alive, trapped in that hellhole for a year, subjected to God knows what kind of experiments. The call. He'd called me today, the anniversary of his supposed death. Said he was trapped, that they were coming back, that he needed help. I grabbed my phone, started to dial 911, then stopped. David had warned not to trust the local police. If Riverside had operated for years without being shut down, they had to have protection. I needed help, but from whom? The FBI number David mentioned seemed like the obvious choice. But what would I tell them? That I received a phone call from my dead brother. That I had evidence of a conspiracy so vast it sounded like science fiction. They'd think I was having a grief-induced breakdown. Sarah, my best friend, worked dispatch with me, but her husband Marcus was a state trooper, one of the good ones. They lived outside the local jurisdiction. Maybe he could help. I called Sarah, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hey, I need to talk to Marcus. It's important." "Emma, you sound terrible. What's going on?" "Please, Sarah, just put Marcus on." There was shuffling, concerned murmuring. Then Marcus's deep voice. Emma Sarah says you're in some kind of trouble. Marcus, I need you to listen and not think I'm crazy. David might be alive. Het is toch maar concealed. What silence? Then carefully. Emma, I know today is hard, but David's gone. You identified the body yourself. I know how it sounds, but I have evidence. Something big is happening at the old Riverside facility. People are disappearing, and I think David found out about it. I think that's why they took him. I don't know exactly. Doctors, scientists, someone conducting illegal medical experiments. Marcus, I have files, videos, proof. But David warned me not to trust local police. I need someone I can trust to look at this. Another long silence. Where are you now? My apartment. Stay there. Lock the doors. I'll be there in 20 minutes. And Emma, don't call anyone else about this, okay? I agreed and hung up. 20 minutes. I used the time to copy David's files to multiple drives, hiding them around my apartment. If something happened to me, maybe someone would find them. Marcus arrived in civilian clothes, his expression serious. I showed him everything David's folder, the videos, the medical records. Watched his face go from skeptical to concerned, to horrified. Jesus Christ, he whispered, staring at the consciousness transfer protocols. This can't be real. But what if it is? What if David's alive and trapped there? Marcus rubbed his face, thinking, Okay, let's say this is real. We can't just storm in there. We don't know what we're dealing with. But I have a friend in the FBI, someone I trust. Let me make some calls, see if we can get federal involvement. He stepped outside to make the calls, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across my living room. Somewhere out there, if the call had been real, David was waiting for help. How many others were trapped with him, subjects of whatever twisted experiments Riverside was conducting? Marcus came back, in his face grim. My friend is interested, but he needs more before he can act. The evidence is compelling, but without a witness, someone who's seen the inside of the facility recently, it's all circumstantial. Then I'll go. Absolutely not. Marcus, he called me. He asked for help. I can't just sit here. Emma, if this is real, these people have killed to keep their secret. They faked your brother's death. You think they'll hesitate to kill you? He was right, but I didn't care. I'm going, with or without your help. Marcus sighed, recognizing the stubborn set of my jaw that Sarah always complained about. Fine, but we do this smart. I'll go with you. We'll do reconnaissance only. Just get close enough to verify activity. Maybe get some pictures. Then we pull back and let the feds handle it. It was a reasonable plan. Too bad nothing about this situation was reasonable. We waited until full dark, then drove to the outskirts of town in Marcus's personal vehicle. The Riverside facility loomed against the night sky, a complex of connected buildings that looked dead and empty. But as we parked in the woods and made our way closer, I could see what David had photographed: lights. In windows that should have been dark, the hum of generators, where there should have been silence. Security cameras, Marcus whispered, pointing to newly installed devices on the perimeter fence. This is definitely not abandoned. We circled the complex, staying in the tree line. The main entrance was sealed, but loading dock doors on the east side showed recent use tire tracks in the mud oil stains on the concrete. And there were vehicles in what had once been the staff parking lot vans, with tinted windows and no license plates. We need to get closer, I whispered. Emma, no, we've seen enough. Active security vehicles power this is enough for the FBI to act. But as we turned to leave, I heard it. Carried on the night wind, so faint I almost missed it. Screaming. Human voices in agony, muffled by walls and distance, but unmistakably real. You hear that? I grabbed Marcus's arm. His face was pale in the moonlight. Yeah, I hear it. We should have left. then should have run back to the car and called in federal backup. But those screams, I couldn't walk away from them, and deep down in a part of me that defied all logic, I knew David was in there. I pointed to a ground floor window where the boards had rotted away. "We can get in there. Emma, this is insane." But I was already moving, crossing the open ground in a crouching run. After a moment's hesitation, Marcus followed. The window was narrow, but I managed to squeeze through, dropping into what had once been a storage room. Marcus followed his larger frame, making it a tight fit. The room was thick with dust and decay, medical supplies from the original hospital, rotting in boxes. But a clear path had been worn through the debris, leading to a door that should have been rusted shut, but opened smoothly on well-oiled hinges. Beyond was a corridor that belonged to a different era. Clean white walls, fluorescent, lighting the antiseptic smell of a working medical facility. It was like stepping from one world into another, the abandoned exterior a perfect camouflage for the active facility within. "Oh, what the hell?" Marcus breathed. Footsteps echoed from somewhere ahead. We ducked into an alcove as two figures in medical scrubs walked past, discussing dosages and neural mapping protocols as casually as if they were in any normal hospital. Once they passed, we continued deeper into the facility. The screaming had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the hum of machinery and occasional footsteps. We passed doors labelled with numbers instead of names, small windows showing glimpses of horror within, operating theatres, recovery rooms, and things I had no name for rooms, filled with machines that seemed to pulse with organic life. Then I saw it. Room 0871. David's case number from the video. The door was heavier than the others, with an electronic lock that glowed red. Through the small window I could see a figure, on a bed, surrounded by machines. Even from behind, even with all the wires and tubes, I knew it was him. "David," I whispered, pressing my hand against the glass. He turned, and I bit back a scream. It was David's face, but wrong. One eye was gone, replaced by a mechanical device that whirred and focused independently. Surgical scars crisscrossed his skull, and metallic things protruded from the base of his neck. But in his remaining eye, I saw recognition. He mouthed my name, tried to rise, but the machines held him in place. "We have to get him out," I said, yanking on the door handle. "It's electronically locked," Marcus said, examining the mechanism. "We'd need a keycard, or the code. Then we find one. Emma, look at him. Look at what they've done. Even if we could get him out, would he survive without those machines?" He was right. Whatever they'd done to David, he was integrated with that equipment now. Removing him might kill him, but leaving him was not an option. "Then we bring down the whole place. Get the FBI here now." Marcus nodded, pulling out his phone. "No signal. Of course not. A place like this would have jammers. We'd have to get outside to call for help." But as we turned to leave, alarms began to wail. Red lights flashed in the corridor, and a mechanical voice announced, "Security breach in Sector 7. Lockdown initiated." Heavy doors slammed shut at both ends of the corridor, trapping us. Through David's window, I saw him thrashing against his restraint's mouth, open, and a scream I couldn't hear through the soundproof glass. "Well, well," a voice said behind us. "Emma Chen, we've been expecting you." I spun around to find a woman in a lab coat standing in a doorway I hadn't noticed before. She was middle-aged, pleasant-looking, the kind of face you'd trust if you met her anywhere else. But her eyes were cold, calculating. "Dr. Melissa Vance," she introduced herself. "Director of the Riverside Research Initiative. Your brother has told us so much about you." "Let him go," I snarled. "Let him go," she laughed, a sound like breaking bells. "My dear, we've invested far too much in David to simply let him go. Do you have any idea how rare he is? A perfect candidate for consciousness transfer, neural plasticity off the charts. His mind adapted to our interfaces like it was meant for them." "You're insane." "Am I?" We're on the verge of the greatest breakthrough in human history, the ability to transfer consciousness to preserve the mind beyond the death of the body. Imagine the applications. No more losing brilliant scientists to age or disease. No more watching loved ones fade away. Death itself becomes optional. You're experimenting on kidnapped people. Volunteers, she corrected. Every subject came here willingly. Liar, David would never, wouldn't he? He came here investigating a story. We showed him our work, offered him the chance to be part of something revolutionary. He agreed, signed all the papers. The car accident was staged for the benefit of his family, to spare you the burden of understanding. I don't believe you. She shrugged. Belief is irrelevant. The work continues, and now we have 2 new volunteers. How fortuitous. More figures emerged from hidden doorways, security guards or orderlies. It was hard to tell. Marcus reached for his concealed weapon, but Dr. Vance shook her head. I wouldn't. You're outnumbered, and we prefer to keep you intact. The process works so much better with undamaged subjects. Process, I asked, though I already knew the answer. Why? Consciousness transfer, of course. Your brother's integration is nearly complete. Soon we'll be able to upload his consciousness entirely free, if from the limitations of biological matter. He'll be immortal, in a sense, as will you once we begin your procedures. The FBI knows we're here, Marcus said. They'll come looking. Oh, I doubt that, Dr. Vance smiled. You see, we have friends in many places. How do you think we've operated for so long? No, I'm afraid no one is coming to save you. But don't worry, the process is quite painless. Initially, the guards moved closer and I knew we were out of options. But then David's door opened, not from the outside, but from within. He stood in the doorway, no longer restrained the machines that had held him, now sparking and damaged. No, he said, his voice a horrible synthesis of human and electronic tones. Not her, not Emma. Dr. Vance sighed. David, you're damaging expensive equipment. Return to your bed. I won't let you take her. You don't have a choice. The neural implants ensure your compliance. David smiled, then a twisted expression on his altered face. You made me too well, Doctor. Gave me too much access to your systems. Did you really think I called Emma by accident? Understanding dawned on Dr. Vance's face. You breached the communication block. How? A consciousness transfer works both ways, David said, tapping the metal protrusions on his skull. I'm not just in the machines anymore. I am the machines. And I've been busy this past year learning, growing, spreading through your entire network. The lights flickered, and suddenly every door in the corridor sprang open. Alarms wailed louder, and from the opened rooms came the subjects, dozens of them, all bearing the marks of Riverside's experiments. Some walked, some crawled, some moved in ways that defied human anatomy, but all were converging on our position. Impossible, Dr. Vance breathed. You wanted to defeat death, David said, advancing on her. Congratulations. You've created something far worse than death. You've created us. What happened next was chaos. The subjects fell upon the guards and Dr. Vance, with a fury born of months or years of torture. Marcus grabbed me, tried to pull me away, but I couldn't leave David. Go, David shouted over the screams. Get out, Emma. Tell the world what happened here. Not without you. I can't leave, he said, and for a moment his voice was purely human. Again, purely my little brother. I'm too integrated. Without the machines, I die. But I can give you time. Go. The building shook, and I realized David was doing more than freeing the subjects. He was in the system, turning the facility against itself. Pipes burst, electrical systems overloaded the entire complex, beginning to tear itself apart. Marcus dragged me away as the ceiling began to collapse. We ran through corridors filled with smoke and screams, following exit signs that flickered between normal directions and messages I knew David was sending. This way, Em. Trust me. I love you. We burst out of the building as the first explosions rocked the complex. Behind us, Riverside burned, decades of hidden horror finally exposed to cleansing flame. In the distance, sirens wailed, emergency services responding to what they'd think was an industrial accident. But I knew the truth. David had called them, just as he'd called me. His last act of defiance against the people who'd stolen his life. We made it to the tree line before the final explosion, a massive fireball that consumed the entire facility. I fell to my knees watching my brother's prison and tomb burn. Marcus stood beside me, silent witness to the impossible. By the time the official investigators arrived, there was little left but rubble and questions. Marcus's FBI contact took our statements, examined what evidence had survived. They found enough remains that showed clear signs of human experimentation, documents that had been uploaded to external servers. In David's final moment, a digital testimony to Riverside's crimes. The investigation would take years. Connections to government programs, private military contractors, foreign interest, all trying to perfect the technology of consciousness transfer. Dozens of missing persons cases were reopened, families given closure, even if they had never understand the full truth. But David was gone, this time truly gone. They found no trace of him in the ruins, his body either completely consumed by the fire or integrated so fully with the destroyed machinery that nothing human remained. I kept working as a 911 dispatcher. Every call could be someone in crisis, someone who needed help. I couldn't save David, but maybe I could save others. Sarah understood why I was different now, why I jumped at certain calls, why I always worked the night shift on October 15th, because sometimes on quiet nights when the call volume is low and the static on the line sounds almost like voices, I swear I hear him. Not calling for help this time, but letting me know he's okay, that whatever he became in those final moments when human consciousness merged completely with digital systems, he found a kind of peace. The official report said the Riverside facility was destroyed in an electrical fire caused by aging infrastructure. The victims found inside were homeless people who'd been squatting in the abandoned building. Dr. Melissa Vance and her team were never officially identified, their bodies too damaged by the fire to yield DNA evidence. But I know the truth. I have copies of David's files hidden in places no one will think to look. Insurance in case anyone tries to restart the project. And sometimes when I'm alone at my dispatch station, my computer screen flickers and displays messages that aren't in any log. Stay safe, I'm watching over you. Not gone, just changed. I don't know if it's really David, some ghost in the machine he became, or just my grief playing tricks, but I choose to believe, because in a world where consciousness can be transferred, where death can be cheated through science and horror, who's to say what's possible? The calls keep coming. Heart attacks, car accidents, domestic disputes, the regular tragedies of human life. But now I listen closer, alert for the impossible, because I know now that sometimes the most unbelievable calls are the most important. Sometimes the dead really do call for help. And when they do, I'll be here to answer. 911, what's your emergency? The line crackles with static that might be more than static, and somewhere in the white noise, I hear my brother smile. The work continues. The vigil never ends. And in the spaces between heartbeats, between breaths, between the living and the dead, the phones keep ringing. I answer them all. It's what David would want. It's what they all deserve, a voice in the darkness promising that help is on the way, even if sometimes help comes in forms we never expected, even if sometimes the greatest help is simply being heard. The static whispers its secrets. I listen, I remember, and I wait for the next impossible call.